Hi, I'm Jan Bratt, and I'm going to teach you how to draw a chicken. First, I'd like to introduce you to the star of Hedgie Surprise. Her name is Bluebell, and she's a silver-laced Wyandotte hen, and I raised her from a chick. And I wanted to raise her from a chick so she'd be nice and tame for when I drew her. She would come up on my art table with me, and I would sketch her so I could make the chickens in the book look like they had personalities. And she's getting to be an old hen now. She's 6 years old, but she still lays eggs once in a while. Well, I think I'd like to take you inside and teach you how to draw a hen, just like Bluebell. Would you like that, Bluebell? I'm in my art studio, and this is my book, Hedgie Surprise. I'd like to show you how to draw a hen, the same animal that's in the book, Bluebell, that you just met. Here's a drawing lesson on how to draw a hen. I'm going to make my hen using two shapes. One is a circle and one is a cone. Here's the circle. I'm drawing it freehand, and if it has a few misshapen parts, that's okay. I have my eraser on the ready. That's a circle that's going to form the body of the hen. And then I have this triangle, which could also be called a cone shape. There's the triangle. And I'm going to be taking the tip off that triangle in order to form the hen's neck. So here are my two shapes, the circle and the cone. And I'm going to turn my paper over and start with the hen now that we know those shapes. So here's my circle. And if you have a pencil ready to follow along with me, that would be good, especially if it has an eraser. Because the way I'm going to teach you how to draw the hen is I'm going to draw these shapes and then erase parts of them off of it. Here's the circle. This is going to form the body of the hen. I'm going to draw a very light line in front of the circle because that's going to show me where I'm going to start my cone. And there's where I press down hard on the pencil, and the cone fits right on top of her body, and that's where her head's going to be. Now I'm making a little circle that's just a little bit bigger than the tip of the cone. And I'm going to erase where the cone has come up. I'm going to erase where the circle attaches to the cone, and also where the cone has hitched to the circle, because this is forming the hen's body. Next, I'm going to do her eye. That helps me decide where everything else is going to go on her face. And when you're drawing an eye, there is a pupil in the center that's black, and if you leave a little space on it, it makes a little sparkle in the animal or person's eye, and it makes it look more realistic. There's her eye, and then if I follow along, that's going to be where her beak starts, and her beak is another triangle. And the top part of the triangle goes down a little bit further than the bottom. She has a little bit of an overbite. And this center part is where the beak opens up, and I'm extending that line a little bit towards the middle of her head, and that's how her beak is formed. And I'm going to erase these other little lines there. Hanging off her beak are her wattles, and they're made out of red skin, and they're very soft and warm. And most hens have those wattles. There are some breeds that have little tiny ones. And a hen also has a little comb, and the comb starts right at the bill, and it has 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the round part up here is called the blade. And that comes in not at the back of her head, but a little bit further than halfway back. Now this hen has to breathe. So not only can she breathe by opening her mouth, but she also has a nostril right here. So I'm just going to make a little black dot there. And in all birds, that's called a series. Behind her eye, a little bit further down, is an oblong shape that's also red, and that's her earlobe. Now it's red on Bluebell because that's what kind of hen she is. Some chickens have a white earlobe, but hers is red. And then this area all around her eye is also red. So when you color that in with your crayons, markers, or colored pencils, you'll know that this is a red color. And then her feathers come down her neck and they form what is called her mantle. A hen's back goes straight across, so I'm going to make my line, intersect my circle, and then take out this line that I was using as a guideline before. And while I'm at it, she is rounded in the front, and then I am going to intersect that circle again and show how her body goes down like that. So there goes the rest, that side of the circle. And this is going to stay because she's very fluffy there. As a matter of fact, that is called the fluff area. And her wings, where this bump comes out, it's about where the bottom of her wing is going to be. And usually the wings are covered up with all her fluffy feathers. And so I'll just draw that in lightly. Many times there's a set of feathers here that have pretty colors in them, so I'm going to draw those in. And these are her flight feathers, because a chicken can fly, although when they get as big as Bluebell, they don't get very far up off the ground. Now I'm going to use that cone shape again for her tail. I'm going to start where the back reaches the end of the circle and about where her wing goes, and I'm going to make that triangle shape again, or cone. And I'm going to cut it off right there. So there's the triangle shape. And this is going to form where her tail is going to go. And this part here is called the cushion, and it's some very fluffy feathers that lay on top of the tail. And if you saw a real hen, you'd see that these blend in quite nicely with her body. And then here are her beautiful tail feathers. I'm going to go right over this end because it turns out I didn't do a good job about how far that feather was going to go out. And there's her tail feathers. And if you were behind that hen, you could see that these feathers make a little tent, and that you could put your hand right there and it'd be empty. These feathers form a little, like a teepee. Now this part is very fluffy, so this is a fun part to draw for me, all these fluffy feathers. The fluff area is called. I'm going to go over this all with a pen at the end. Now this is where her feet come down, and sometimes you can see a little line where her leg comes up into the fluff area. And these are her legs. They're also called shanks. And there's a little bit of feathers that grow over the top of her shanks. And then she has 3 toes in front with toenails at the end. And 1 toenail in the back. And that's how she stands. And I think you'd be surprised to see how thick those legs are, because when you look at wild birds, they're very, very thin. And those are her leg scales. If you feel a chicken's legs, they feel nice and warm to the touch. And they start out in this kind of hen being very bright yellow. And as she lays eggs, they get paler and paler yellow. So if you notice Bluebell's legs, they were kind of a yellowish gray. And I think she's just about done. I'm going to use my pen now to go over what I've drawn so it will look better for the camera. Now I've noticed I've made a little hump in the back of her head. That's really not supposed to be there, so I'm going to take that out when I'm doing my magic marker. And I'm using a little bit of a fluttery line here because there's some feathers that come up and cover her comb, and there are the 5 points. And this is bright red, always a sign of good health for chickens if they have bright red comb and wattles. And there are the wattles that come down. And this red area goes over around her eye. There's that pupil that I said to leave a little speck, her earlobe. And we'll make a few little sketch marks where her feathers are. And then all these beautiful hackle feathers are coming down. And where her body forms a nice hen-like stance. And we'll do her legs in black too. Toenail, toenail, toenail. And there are the scales. And those scales will continue down onto her toes as well. And I'll do this other leg at the same time. Now this kind of hen, a silver-laced Wyandotte, starts laying their eggs at about 7 months, 6 or 7 months. And she will lay quite steadily for about 3 years. And then as she gets older, she'll have less eggs. But they're very good to eat. And then here are those tail feathers. And in order to make those tail feathers look a little bit more realistic, I'll show little lines here where the feather has parted a bit. And the hen is very careful to keep all her feathers nice and neat. And she'll take her bill and she'll comb them just like you would comb your hair with a brush to make sure that they lie flat and they look nice. That's called preening. Now hens come in all different colors and patterns. And Bluebell, being a silver-laced Wyandotte, has lots of spots on her chest. And each spot is on a feather. And I think that's one of the fun things to draw is a pattern on my chickens. And then in the back, sometimes she has a little white on the tips of her feathers too. So I'll draw that in too. And there's some more spots. And I think she's just about done. What do you think she's thinking about? I think she's thinking about when she's going to get her next treat, which she gets scratch grains, which is wheat and oats and cracked corn. And sometimes if she is out in the garden, she'll find some nice worms and insects to eat as too. Now an artist needs to sign their name, so here's my name. And I would love to see what you have drawn. I'm sure it is even better than my portrait of Bluebell. Now you've met my hen, Bluebell. You know how to draw a hen yourself. And last of all, here's my portrait that I spent lots of time with my watercolors drawing. And there she is sitting on her nest. She may be sitting on some eggs there waiting for some chicks to come, just like in the book. And she's got an expression that kind of says, please don't put your hands underneath me and take those eggs away, because they are going to be chicks someday. Thanks for joining me. That's how to draw a chicken.